William Byron and Hendrick Motorsports play all their cards right and dominate in Las Vegas. Let's talk about NASCAR's third race of the season. Hello everybody, welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host Alex Lambert, and let's talk about NASCAR in Las Vegas. And boy, those Hendrick guys dominated today, especially William Byron. William Byron leads 175 of the 271 laps today, getting his first win of the season and his fifth career victory. And Hendrick Motorsports, for the third time in their history, finishes 1, 2, 3 with Kyle Larson second and Alex Bowman in third. Hendrick Motorsports was the class of the field all day long. They had it figured out, and let's go through the field. We had a couple of favorites like Joey Logano, Kyle Busch have awful races. I'll obviously break that down as well. But let's go ahead and get right on into it, and let's talk about Hendrick Motorsports and William Byron especially. This is William Byron's fifth win of his career, and all of his wins except his first one, which was at Daytona in 2020, he has led over 100 laps in the race. So William Byron tends to dominate the races that he wins. You go back to Martinsville last year, he led 212 laps. You go back to Miami where he led over 100 laps. That was his second career win. You go to today at Las Vegas, led 175 of the 271 laps. So William Byron tends to win the races that he dominates. He wins these races in dominating form. But he did not have it easy today. We can take a look here at the finish. You see Kyle Larson was leading this race late. He was leading with 4 laps to go. And you see here Eric Almirola spun, causing a caution. Now, whether this spin or this Eric Almirola hitting the wall should have been a caution or not is completely up for fans to debate. But nonetheless, it did throw a caution. NASCAR threw a caution for this incident, and that caused and forced an overtime restart. So we had to restart this race with 2 laps to go, where Martin Truex Jr. tried to stay out on old tires, but immediately faded. And William Byron beat Kyle Larson coming off a pit road, and that was probably the winning move of the race, was that final pit stop. In a race where the top 3 Hendrick cars, especially the top 2, you could maybe include Alex Bowman in this since he never got the lead. But between William Byron and Kyle Larson, at least, those 2 cars were almost even. Kyle Larson said Byron was a little bit quicker, but those 2 cars were both really fast. I think whoever came off pit road first, especially with Truex staying out, was probably going to win this race, and that's exactly what happened. And William Byron coming off of pit road first was kind of the winning move, I think, for William Byron to win this race. So props to the pit crew. The pit crew, when it comes down to it, was probably one of the main reasons William Byron was able to get the win on that overtime restart. And Kyle Larson's pit crew was probably the reason, since they were just a little bit slower and lost that lead, lost a spot on pit road, was probably the reason Kyle Larson and the 5 team could not capitalize and get the victory. So it's a good problem to have if you're Rick Hendrick and Jeff Gordon, but it's a bad problem to have, obviously, if you're Kyle Larson, getting the loss today after an almost guaranteed win with just a few laps to go and a huge win. Like I said, you saw the finish there. Martin Truex Jr. trying to stay on the bottom, trying to hold him off, but on the old tires had no shot. William Byron in the 24 car just is just able to take off and excel and get that lead and go on to win his 5th career win and his first ever Las Vegas win. So let's go through the entire top 10 just real quick. I want to talk a little bit about William Byron, who finished first, obviously. Then we had Kyle Larson in second, Alex Bowman finished third. Now, Alex Bowman was probably the only Hendrick driver outside of the 9 car, Josh Berry. I'll talk about him in just a second. That was moving around the field a little bit. He was not always in third. Alex Bowman started in the back of the field. I think he started outside the top 10, was able to work his way up into the top 10, but was not that third place car all day like William Byron and Kyle Larson were. William Byron and Kyle Larson were 1-2 for this entire race. They were the class of the field, and Alex Bowman was able to get up there. Your defending Las Vegas winner, by the way, was able to get up there and finish in the 3rd position. I do want to mention, like I said, Chase Elliott, who was not in the race today. If you haven't heard, I think it's pretty well-known news by now, but if you haven't heard, Chase Elliott was not in today's race. He is out for injury after a skiing incident in Colorado, a serious leg injury. Kyle Busch said he thinks he's going to be out for at least a month. We don't have a realistic timetable set out yet for when Chase Elliott can return. Obviously, we're all thinking about him, hoping that he can return as soon as possible to Cup competition. But Josh Berry was filling in for today, full-time Xfinity driver for Junior Motorsports, which is a Hendrick Motorsports affiliated team in the Xfinity series. And he was able to, take that was his third start, Josh Berry's third career start, but his first start in the next-gen car. So it takes a little bit of time to learn that 9-car finish 29th today. Josh Berry just trying to log some laps in, learn about the race car. I'm confident that they'll leave him in next week in Phoenix, but I don't know. But I'm confident we'll see Josh Berry race at least a few more races, filling in for Chase Elliott as he is currently out for injury. But like I said, hope that Chase Elliott gets back to competition to where he can race 100% as soon as possible. Let's go through the rest of the top 10 here. We got Bubba Wallace, who finished in 4th. Bubba Wallace, if you remember, his last top 5 finish until today was at Kansas last year in the fall race, which, if you remember, Las Vegas and Kansas are sister racetracks. So when we come to these types of racetracks, like Las Vegas, like Kansas, Bubba Wallace tends to always be a threat. He's really fast at those racetracks. He was fast last year at Las Vegas until that incident with Larson. But Bubba Wallace just really fast at these cookie-cutter mile-and-a-half tracks, and we continue to see that every time we go to these types of racetracks with the 4th place finish today, the top finishing Toyota. Right behind him was Christopher Bell. Christopher Bell had a really up and down day. Was able to work his way to the front of the field. Was never as fast as those Hendrick cars, obviously. Nobody was touching those top 3 Hendrick cars, or those top 2 Hendrick cars at least, all day long. But Christopher Bell was able to get into the top 10, get in the top 5, and then had a vibration. Not sure what that was. I never heard a report on what exactly that was. Came down pit road, got it fixed. It might have been a loose wheel, something of that nature. Was able to climb all the way back up to 5th after the overtime restart. So a really good day for Christopher Bell, recovering from a pretty bad week last week, or a bad finish last week. And that's 2 top 10 finishes, I believe, on the year for Christopher Bell already. So once again, I talk about this all the time. Christopher Bell, one of those more consistent drivers, maybe the most consistent team over there at Hendrick Motorsport, at Joe Gibbs Racing, and you see him once again in the top 5. Now, Austin Cindric is one of those that really snuck up there. That overtime finish, that green-white checkered with 2 laps to go, was really helpful to him because he was not in the top 10 for really any of the race. Every time I looked at the leaderboard, he was outside the top 10, which is, I was watching him because typically your Penske Fords do really good at this racetrack. They had an awful day today. He's your top finishing Ford. He is a Penske Ford, but he's your top finishing Ford, finishing in the 6th position for Austin Cindric. So good for him to get up there at the end and get a 6th place finish, but he really didn't have top 10 speed for most of the day. Just kind of got up there at the end and capitalized on others' misfortune, which is still a top 10 finish, but didn't have that speed like I thought those Penske Fords would have had. Martin Truex Jr. was probably a 4th or 5th race car all day long. Obviously on the old tires, fell back to 7th with 2 laps to go. Good thing he was able to hold that off. Justin Haley was able to capitalize on the overtime restart as well, finishing in the 8th position. So a pretty good day for Justin Haley and the 31 team at Colleague. And then Kevin Harvick in his final farewell season, another top 10. I believe that's 2 top 10s in a row for him. Was able to finish in the 9th position, which is about where he run most of the day. Right behind him, you see Daniel Suarez in 10th, about where Suarez was most of the day as well, about a 10th place race car. That was kind of the class of the day. Where you were, where your car was supposed to be was typically where you were throughout the entire race. That doesn't mean it was a bad race. I don't think cars were stalling out and it was dirty air. That's just kind of how this race played. If you remember, it was a wild race last fall, a more tame race today until that overtime restart. But William Byron was the fastest car of the day, was able to win. And typically where you were on track most of the day is where you finished. Although I do want to go through a couple of the guys outside of the top 10. I want to go through 11th through 15th because those guys are probably going to be key guys I want to talk about all year, but those are going to be key guys especially for this race. So you see Denny Hamlin in 11th was probably one of those top 10 race cars, like I said, was really fast all day, was actually catching the leader, was able to stay in there when he tried a strategy move by only taking 2 tires on pit road. He was able to stay right in there with those Hendrick guys. I think he run a bunch of laps there in 2nd before the end of this thing. And was able to stay in front of William Byron for a long period of time. And then that overtime restart, something happened. The car just got really loose, got to the high side of the track, got 3 wide, didn't have a good start, fell all the way back to 11th. So the overtime restart, like I said, there were a few guys that capitalized on it. Denny Hamlin was one that really took a hit from it, finishing 11th, which is not good considering he really should have got a top 5 in this race if you ask me, and I'm sure if you ask him. Ross Chastain, another one of those guys that took a really big hit. He was probably maybe a 3rd or 4th place race car most of the race, was in the top 5 for most of the time when you check the leaderboard. The overtime restart really shuffled him back, finished 12th for Ross Chastain. Ryan Blaney was actually able to get up there and capitalize. Like I said, those Penske Fords were awful today. None of them were up there in the top like I would have expected. So Ryan Blaney was able to get up there to a 13th. I think he was not in the top 15 for a majority of the race, 12 car Ryan Blaney was able to rebound, get all the way into the 13th position. Kyle Busch was in the wall early multiple times, tore up some of the race car. I don't think that race car, after he got into the wall, was handling quite as good as he wanted it to. Some issues with the toe link, apparently. At least that was what Fox was reporting on their broadcast. Kyle Busch finishing 14th, which is really disappointing for him. But he was off all day long. I think he started 5th, fell back immediately, and was outside the top 10 or 10th for a majority of the day. And then you had Tyler Reddick, who was able to sneak into the top 10 there and then lost the speed. A 15th place finish for Tyler Reddick, trying to turn that season around. Tyler Reddick is really having a bad start to the season. I know 15th you can say is not that bad, but the expectations we put in this car for this 45 car all year long, we thought this was going to be the guy to beat. We thought Tyler Reddick was going to be a championship contender. At least a lot of people predicted he would be a championship contender. 15th isn't going to cut it, and he's not. He only got 4 points in the first 2 races of the season, so still rough start to the year for Tyler Reddick, especially considering he was able to come all the way into the top 15 today as well. Another one of those Penske Fords I want to talk about, one of the favorites going into today's race was Joey Logano. Qualified on pole, was really fast in practice on Saturday, and then started the race and immediately started falling back as soon as the green flag flew. He lost a ton of positions, was outside of the top 15 when he got caught up in a wreck here. You can take a look. Kyle Busch on the bottom, Brad Keselowski, his former teammate, in the middle, and just run out of real estate there for Joey Logano. Got into the wall, slid down into the grass, into the infield, and spun. And really, that ended Joey Logano's day. He got a DNF, which is his first DNF of the season. So, awful day, like I said, for the Penske Fords all around, and it got even worse with that wreck for Joey Logano. So, surprised to see that. Joey Logano's your defending winner at this racetrack last fall, if you don't remember, and for him not to even finish today, and for those Fords, man, to do awful today was just a bit surprising to me. But like I said, Hendrick really stepped up all day long. I do want to mention the rookie class, or the battle for the Rookie of the Year, which against Ty Gibbs and Noah Gragson. Both of them had really rough races today. We had Ty Gibbs get a penalty for too many men over the wall, so I guess that's more on the pit crew than anything else. He got that penalty, ended up finishing in the 22nd position, laps down. I think he was 1 lap down. And then Noah Gragson, 2 pit road speeding penalties mid-race, which I believe that second pit road speeding penalty is a pass-through and stop in the pit box. At least it used to be. I have to check up and see if that was still the rule. So awful day for your rookie class there. Noah Gragson finished, I think it was 2 or 3 laps down in the 30th position. So your rookie class, I wanted to kind of follow those two this year, having some rough starts to the season, which is not entirely unexpected, but they're definitely having a rough start to the year. So next week we go to our first race with the short track package, which is, I think, tracks 1.3 miles or less. So we'll get to see that. We'll get to see how that works. We have a new short track package for next week at Phoenix. It should be a little bit better. If you remember last year at the short tracks, we had a big problem with cars stalling out, cars getting stuck behind others. Hopefully this package that NASCAR's trying out will help fix that. It's going to be exciting. I hope you guys enjoy the race next week. And of course, check out Dirty Air next week after the Phoenix race, following the Phoenix race. And like and subscribe if you like the video. And of course, about Kyle Busch hitting the wall and finishing 14th. Let's get rowdy.